Alright, welcome on in everyone to another episode of First CSP, the channel dedicated to bring you the first council shoulder patch issued from each council in Scouting America, both past and present. Today we're going to take a look at Columbia Pacific 492 out of Oregon. This council was originally formed in 1966 as a name change from Portland area and lasted up until 1992 when it merged with Cascade area to form Cascade Pacific. We've got a lot of patches to take a look at today because the first several issues all really have variations of the same graphic. So let's start on the patch table with, of course, the T1. The T1 is going to be substantially distinct because there are no state names at the bottom. So there's not really going to be a lot of confusion with identification here. It is really the rest of the issues T2, T3, T4, T5, which all have very similar imagery to the first issue, T1. They will have the state names and then some of the rays and whether or not it has a fleur-de-lis and the bird's wing all are the slight variations as things went on. But the T1 is identified with its light yellow border, light blue sky, 8 specific thin rays from the sun. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 right here. Red letters and no state names. So it is, because of no state names, pretty easy to identify. Here's the back. It is a essentially, I guess, a gauze cloth back. It is cloth back. We can also see the lock stitching here is yellow. That will be kind of interesting as a side note as we look at some of the next issues with the T2, just for comparison's sake. But there is the T1. The T2 essentially is the same design, but then adds in the state names at the bottom. Let's see if we can fit this below down here. So there are the state names, which are going to differentiate this as a T2. The T2 has the same number of rays, so we're still going to see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's 8. 8 rays. Only the first two CSPs, the T1 with no state names and the T2 with the state names, are the only ones that have 8 rays. Everything else has a decreasing number of rays. The T3 has 7, the T4s have 6, the T5s have 6. So those are another way to start to differentiate between the subsequent CSP issues that Columbia Pacific put out. This one also happens to be a cloth back and the lock stitching happens to be in yellow, but that's not true for all of the T2s. So this is one production run of the T2. I'm going to take off the T1 now and put another production run of the T2. So here's another production run of the T2. This one was then done with white lock stitching. So when we flip it over, you can see very clearly, so we'll do a comparison, the yellow lock stitching versus the white lock stitching attaching that border. But again, there's no fleur-de-lis, so we know that it's a T2 because there's no fleur-de-lis and it has the state names. Also, we can count the rays, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's 8. So 8 rays on this one as well. We have one more T2 to take a look at. So they obviously did a lot of production runs of the T2. Again, you could count the 8 rays on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This one doesn't really have a direction on the twill where you can kind of see that there are direction for the twill on the two previous ones. Oop, my sticker's coming off. This one done with yellow lock stitching. Also just a cloth back. After that, they started adding the fleur-de-lis. So the T3 has a fleur-de-lis and 7 rays. I don't happen to have a T3 or a T4 to show you, but they are not all that dissimilar from then the T5. T5 now has thicker rays and it has 6 of them. Also, the wing has changed. So instead of having that elongated wing, this is now called the short wing, which is going to identify a T5 specifically. But if you had the longer wing, you would probably, with a fleur-de-lis, be looking at a T3 or a T4. The The T4 came in 2 variations, A and B. The T5 comes in 3 variations, A, B, and C. We actually do have all of those here. Obviously less important when it comes to identifying the first issue, because these are, with fleur-de-lis, certainly not the first issue. But as far as the T5 goes, the T5A had a pale blue sky. The T5B has a blue sky, so this is an A, we believe. This is a B, and then the C had a blue sky. So you can see it gets real dark. So a lot of variations if you're a Columbia Pacific Council collector to try and sort through as far as what they produced early on. Many of them do look somewhat similar, so they can be harder to discern. I think the biggest challenge with first issues is just making sure you don't have those state names. So again, the T1 first issue here with no state names, 8 rays, and then you'll find the T2s have the state names and also 8 rays. Anything other than 8 rays and you're not dealing with the first 2 issues. Hopefully that's helpful for you guys with identification for Columbia Pacific and the first CSP they released. That's all for today's episode. We'll be back again tomorrow with another brand new episode of First CSP. We hope to see you back here for that. Until then, thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.